I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. I requested this interview a year ago in the summer of 2024. And finally, here we are with Montgomery County Public Schools' year-old Superintendent Thomas Taylor, the first alumni of the school district to come back as its chief. Logging into our Zoom call last Monday, the first thing Taylor told me was that the Office of the Inspector General in the county was just about to release a report that said that MCPS had neglected to run regular background checks on thousands of teachers and staff as required by state law, going back to the pandemic and even earlier. A new law passed in 2019 required background checks, and MCPS simply forgot to do this, initially perhaps because the pandemic arrived with its own chaos. But MCPS has not done this year after year since. Did the law require any state agency to hold MCPS to account? Did MCPS's general counsel keep track of its legal obligations? The office that deals with employees and background checks has turned over many times as well. Another thing to clean up, Taylor said ruefully, even before I had started recording. Taylor has said that MCPS last used to be a top-notch school district in 2011-2012. That was the year after Jerry Wiest retired as MCPS superintendent. The Wiest hagiography is pervasive not just in the school district, but across the county. Several years ago now, Mike Subin, the former county council member, told me how he, as the chair of the county council's Education and Culture Committee, worked up budgets during the early aught years on Wiest's deck over scotch and cigars, alongside then Teachers Union President and now Delegate Bonnie Cullison. Neither Wiest nor Cullison have confirmed this for me, but I imagine Subin's description was correct in spirit. The county was growing, the federal government was growing, tax collection was growing, and larger pies meant larger slices for all. The legacy of those years likely lasted through the 2008 financial crisis, and in 2011-2012, the people, processes, and outcomes were still in place. The decade and a half since has been challenging with budgets, with changing demography, with the pandemic, and now cutbacks to the federal government. Within MCPS, there were several disorienting swings in leadership styles, much of which Taylor encapsulates as a problem of organizational culture. So by definition, entrenched and intractable. It turns out Superintendent Taylor likes to read leadership books and sees the MCPS chief's job to be akin to running a major corporation. One lesson he picked up comes from Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was the vice presidential pick for Ross Perot in the 1990s. Taylor told me that there was something called the Stockdale paradox, wherein a leader must speak the absolute truth about his or her organization, even brutally, and yet maintain optimism about the organization. And what about the causal connection between the two that lends credibility to planning? To find out, stay with us.
I Hate Politics is brought to you by UMBC's Political Science Program, where you'll learn to shape public policy, impact communities, and function at the center of modern society. Learn more at shadygrove.umbc.edu.
I'm gonna get to heaven. I got my things packed. I'm heading towards that secret blessing. My secret weapon never prospered. Now my grip is shedding, and my old beef is deaded. I met a chucklehead with dreads.
I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we may hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society functioning, precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. To honor Superintendent Taylor's musical taste, music for this episode comes from Cataclysm, a Damascus-based rapper, a former MCPS and UMBC alum, also known as Matt Thornton. You can find his album Machine Gun Preacher on YouTube at The Reckoning 301.
I cannot hide the stains that show the damage that I done. Just look at what we was. Two people pulled in the past tense. Your family talk with an accent, but I still say her on accident. That boy don't have no shame. I maintain my name in this lane, but them awful things that your mom tried to put all up in my brain. I'm a man, goddamn, I'm human. In a gunfight now with Cupid, we polluted the roots we assumed with. They made it a topic for this music. A topic for this music.
Thomas Taylor, welcome to I Hate Politics.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
You have said that special education keeps you up awake at night. Your 2026 budget includes a big ask of 688 special ed teachers and paraeducators. Given that there's an acute nationwide shortage in special ed staffing, have you been able to make those hires now that we are 3 weeks out from first day of school?
Well, let me just say that there's a lot that keeps me up at night, and MCPS. Special education is definitely on the list, although it seems to be going further down the list. We have been able to fill a lot of our vacancies, and we're making tremendous progress. We're right now sitting in the mid-90s in terms of our fill rate, which is right on pace for where we were last year. I'm still a little bit behind on paraprofessionals. I'm in the high 80s in terms of my fill rate for paraprofessionals, which is ahead of where we were, but we added a lot of positions this year. We have some other high impact positions that are consistent and persistently hard to fill. Some are connected, or they're related services to special education, things like speech language pathologists, OT, PT. Those are definitely issues, and oddly enough, we still have trouble finding certain subject areas in the general education space, and even elementary school teachers from time to time.
You have said about special ed that there is more than budgets, and that you have to get ahead of in special ed. What are the other changes you are making, or have you made in how MCPS delivers special ed?
I would characterize special education in Montgomery County over the last several years would be adversarial, combative, very prescriptive, and not really flexible or bespoke to the individual needs of the children that we're serving. The IEP process, or the individualized education plan process, is very complex. It's got a lot of jargon, a lot of timelines and verbiage, and I'm not sure that we make that better. And I think that we really do need to take a holistic view of what programs and services we're offering, where we're offering them, how we might serve students closer to their homeschool environment versus busing them across the county or to discrete programs in faraway places.
These are areas that have been identified for a long time. Do you have any specific changes that you're going to propose to these things so that, for example, the IEP process is improved?
The first step was to make sure that we are actually staffing to the levels that we tell people that we're staffing to. We were broadcasting that we were staffing to one level, and we were far short of reaching that level. And at least now we will have classroom support that is adequate to what our staffing guidelines say. The next phase of that is looking at step-by-step processes and really retraining our staff on how to interact to find the best results for our kids. And candidly, that's not been a priority of the district in terms of doing great tier 1 instruction training for our general educators as well as our special educators. And then also for our special educators, having a set process that is an MCPS process that is known and that parents can rely on, whether they're in elementary school, middle school, or high school, in one corner of the county or the other corner of the county. Just doesn't exist.
The big issue I've heard from special education teachers is that the paperwork load is very high, and that because of the paperwork load, they are unable often to do the things that they think is necessary. And there's a sort of a different models of it that where you have case managers and classroom teachers, and those two functions are separated, but not in MCPS. So, any kind of thoughts about any separation on that end or anything like that?
Well, I'm actually not aware of a single school system that fully separates case management and classroom instructions. I think that they are absolutely integral, that if you are serving a student as a case manager, that you should interact with that student in a classroom environment. The paperwork piece is real, and not just in special education, but in a lot of other functional areas. Our teachers have a huge administrative burden. Some of that is federally required. Some of that is state required, and admittedly, and unfortunately, some of that is MCPS required. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us to revisit what that might look like to reduce some of that administrative burden. But I think that that's just one piece of the puzzle. I think making sure that we keep class sizes at a reasonable space, that we consistently staff in an appropriate way, and that we have an actual system and structure, which we don't, that's in place that folks can rely on, will make a huge difference.
So if you're able to hire more people now that you're filling up, class sizes should not be increasing anymore.
Correct, in special education. That's right.
But what about general education now?
And in general education, we're definitely seeing a leveling off. I wouldn't say that class sizes are increasing in MCPS. There was a budget, the budget that was passed right before I arrived a year ago, which did increase class size by an average of one student. And let me explain what that means mathematically. When you take all of the students and divide by the number of teachers, you get an average. It did not mean that one extra student was being placed in every single classroom.
Given the fact that you include non-teaching staff as well in that calculation, the net result of is that, in fact, one student average increase is sometimes 3 or 4 students in a classroom.
We don't have staffing standards in MCPS. We have very loose staffing guidelines. It is actually a project of ours this upcoming year to work this into our budget discussion for fiscal 27 to establish what staffing standards might look like, which would remove that variable of non-instructional staff being calculated into that process.
You count the new grading policy as one of your successes in your first year. The policy is yet to be tested in schools, and students have questioned how exactly the specific grading changes you have made leads to rigor. What is the causal connection between stricter grading policy and student performance?
Well, I'm curious about where the idea of rigor came from, because I'm not sure that this is a very rigorous grading policy. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure where that phrase came from or where that notion came from, because if anything, what our aim is to make sure that our grades are a better reflection of the work that is being done in the classrooms. The past grading policy, you really only had to have a high mark for one marking period to carry the entire year. Now we're using a mathematical process of actually averaging the mathematical grades for each marking period. We've also instituted a summative assignment expectation in each marking period, so that we are assessing performance and trying to relate that to the grade performance right now, because we're not seeing the correlation between how our students are performing on external assessments and how their grades are being reported. We're also seeing some really interesting fluctuations in attendance from students who know how to game the system in terms of their attendance in the second and fourth marking periods relative to the first and third marking periods. We're hoping that this should reverse some of that and be a better reflection of how they're performing.
Is it your understanding that the primary reason for student underperformance or student not learning is that students are not motivated enough to try harder because of the laxity that comes with being able to get a higher grade in one quarter and then slack off in the other. Is that your understanding of what the problem of performance and learning is?
Oh no, I wish it was that simple. That would make my life a lot easier and the lives of a lot of educators a lot easier if that were the case. But do I think that that is one component? Yes. I think we owe it to our kids to have better alignment between the curriculum, assessments, instruction, how our educators are evaluated, the type of professional learning that we offer, that there needs to be better alignment of those things in addition to policies that reflect performance better.
In a recent interview, you said more than the technical aspects and the financial pieces, and even the curriculum issues and instructional challenges, the cultural pieces were really the Humpty Dumpty that needed to be put together. How will changing culture resolve curriculum and instructional issues, including the ones you just mentioned, such as aligning grading and curriculum?
This is a management issue. Our educators are doing a phenomenal job. However, there are some structural components and some cultural components to MCPS which are really unfavorable. We have had a system-first approach for a really long period of time where what we say goes from the ivory tower at 15 West Goody versus really putting the emphasis on where things really need to be, which is what happens in the schoolhouse. I regularly interact with parents, and when they ask me what's the secret to public education, I tell them it's really simple. Make sure that your teacher is phenomenal in your kid's classroom and that you have a relationship with your teacher. And then they say, okay, well, what's the second thing? And I say, make sure that your principal in your school is a great principal and that you have a great relationship with your principal, because great teachers want to work with great principals. Well, I got to tell you, I think that we're hitting it out of the park for the most part in MCPS in terms of teachers and principals. I think that there's some central management pieces, some customer service pieces that really need some work. When somebody calls MCPS, I got to tell you, I'm not thrilled with the interactions that people have. I've heard some really significant horror stories from some people about being passed around 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times to different people and still not getting an answer to the question that they ask. Even our own employees, when they interact with our school system, whether it's through payroll or human resources, or even trying to get support through curriculum, they're hitting roadblocks that are really untenable. It would be naive of anyone to think that miraculous change is going to happen overnight, or if any one person is going to have a significant influence enough that everyone is just automatically just going to be nicer to people and everything's just going to work magically.
Can I ask you, aren't the people that work in the central office previously the ones that were teachers and principals, and they are the same people?
I think in many cases, yes.
So if they perform well in one setting, and you're saying they're not performing well in another setting?
Well, and I'm not saying that they're even not performing well. I think that there's a lack of coherence in terms of pointing in the same direction and us really trying to accomplish a cogent set of goals and us really all pulling in the same direction. I think our folks at central office work hard too, but they may also be working to different ends and not see the goals the same way that some of our staff at the building level see our goal.
But you're appointing these people. Why aren't they working together?
Well, and I got to tell you that I think is a cultural barrier in MCPS of just how we are as a school system. And it's something that we need to get over. And it's something that we need to refocus our energy on how we might serve others in our community versus thinking about what's happening in our office or what's happening with ourselves.
You have talked about over-delivering in this area. But whether or not you do so depends on what expectations you have set.
Yes.
MCPS has long said, for example, that it meets all students where they are. I've been in classrooms for 25 years. That level of differentiation is close to impossible. But
Yes.
that is the expectation you're setting. And if that is the case, every family will hold you to that. And no matter how well you do or not, you would have underdelivered. Are you setting the right expectations here?
Yeah, I don't think we should stop trying. I think that that's the right goal. I really do. I could lower my expectations, and I think our results would follow. Our expectations do need to be set high, and that we need to create the system, structures, and processes to help us meet those expectations. I did a really interesting book study with the leaders in the school system. We read Will Guidara's book, Unreasonable Hospitality, and if you haven't read this book, I
I have a question about that. Will Guidara, to console one couple that had to cancel their vacation,
Yeah.
trucked in sand into a private dining room and provided Mai Tais. I'm just wondering how a public agency like MCPS, how is it within your remit to make such a lavish expense on behalf of one family? I don't know what the equivalent is.
I can tell you exactly what the equivalent is. And I don't think that it is in one-off lavish expenses. But I do think it is when a family or a student or a parent are having a moment. And oftentimes we get to see people when they're not having their best day, that there is empathy and care and a listening ear, an open heart, a bottle of water and a Kleenex.
A bottle of water and a Kleenex is equivalent to a room full of sand that approximates a beach.
If you are in crisis and you need empathy, I think that empathy is what wins the day.
Who do you think is responsible for not even showing a empathy worth a bottle of water and a Kleenex? Where does that problem lie?
Well, I think that you're dealing with a big systemic issue, which is how people see their role in interacting with one another, and just being hyper aware of the needs of others, which I don't think has been a priority, and I don't think it's been something that we've prioritized as a district.
The problem with holding the system responsible is that change is very hard to bring about because everybody then becomes responsible. And if everybody is responsible, then nobody is responsible. How do you, I
don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why not? Because, we know from time, prioritization works like that. So when you want systemic change, you have to hold certain parts of the system directly responsible, and then that's what you do. So where is the responsibility for people that can't even deliver a bottle of water and Kleenex to a family in distress?
Well, I think it's just this. I certainly can control the sphere that I interact with on a regular basis. The folks that I supervise control the sphere that they interact with on a regular basis. And that has a ripple effect. And I think that ripple effect begins with us holding each other accountable for when things go well and when things don't go well. And there is no shortage of things that don't go well in MCPS.
Have you set the right expectations with respect to boundary studies, program analysis? Do you think that the expectation and the expectation setting in those cases were the right?
You have to recognize that any time that you are going to be adjusting anything, whether it's a program or whether it's a school boundary, that people are going to be upset or anxious. And I would hope that we have approached this with the understanding that we take this very seriously, the placement of where our attendance boundaries are, because we know how sensitive it is. People make home purchase decisions based on where they think their children are going to go to school. People make professional decisions based on this oftentimes as well. And so we do take it seriously, but we also have a job to do in terms of evaluating how best to meet the capacity needs of the district.
In a recent article in the school CEO website where you were interviewed, the article described your reorganization of the 207 MCPS schools as the creation of 13 smaller school districts. Do you agree with that description?
Not really. Our approach to creating service teams that are deployed to different corners of the county, I think will help. But some of those service teams are not necessarily geographically aligned. They're aligned with needs. I think that there is an advantage for us to shrink the service footprint to provide a little bit more of direct service. Imagine you are a classroom teacher and you desperately need support on how to manage your special education or emergent multilingual learner classroom, and you don't really feel like you have the toolkit to do that. And you call central office and you could talk to any number of people before getting an answer, but who is related to you as a direct service provider for your specific school has never really been articulated. And so I'm hoping to solve that by creating some cross-functional teaming and providing some groups of folks that are specifically assigned to a set of schools that can provide direct services to a set of schools that are focused on a discrete set of goals that they're trying to accomplish.
I thought MCPS has long had a system of directors that supervised a bunch of schools, and those directors had teams to help do all of that. And that's not true.
You got the half of that right. They have the director part, but not the teams part. And this would be the enhancement, which is to actually put some muscle behind the supervision.
Let's talk a little bit about school safety. It's a preferred security response in many, many schools is to lock down bathrooms, forcing students from higher to lower floor bathrooms, which are now overcrowded, dirty, and out of menstrual products.
Yeah.
Do you agree with these bathroom closures?
No. No, I think that's silly.
So, this raises the question of the centralization-decentralization balance that we've been talking about a lot.
Yeah.
The decision to close bathrooms are very typically made in the school, and they are completely wrong. It has this throw the baby out with the bathwater problem.
Yes.
And I have been horrified at how many schools do it in such a widespread fashion.
Yeah.
So, if you don't agree, will you issue a directive saying that schools cannot simply close bathrooms for security reasons alone?
Yes, absolutely, and happy to be held accountable to that. This goes to a couple of things. Principals are stretched pretty thin. Sometimes in a moment of convenience when trying to investigate something, they might do what's easy for adults versus what's easy for children. That default, I think, is part of a reset that we just need to have and to be a little bit more empathetic.
School climate surveys in your 207 buildings show great variance. How are principals held accountable for climate survey results?
211.
Sorry, 211.
That's a big change for us. We've been collecting the data and we've been reporting the data, but other than reporting the data, we haven't really been doing much about it. I think that this is arguably one of the most critical data points that we have, is people's perception about how they feel about their school experience, whether or not they feel safe when they come to school, and whether or not they feel like they're getting a quality education or their child is getting a quality education, whether the staff feel engaged. So hearing from those three perspectives really is quality information that we need to incorporate. This kind of goes to another big project that I'm hoping to initiate this year involving how we evaluate our staff in general. I think that there's some critical pieces that are missing in our staff evaluation, which, surprise, surprise, also really hasn't been updated in the last 2 decades. And a lot's changed in the last 2 decades. we don't have an expectation of cultural competence in our evaluation system as it is right now. That's a big barrier for us because we're a very diverse community, and how we don't have the expectation for cultural competence and that we don't evaluate our staff on that at any level, problematic for me. And you talk about how the culture and climate data factors in for our leaders. That's not a part of our evaluation system as a metric that's used to evaluate our principals, but it should be.
Will it need a change in the collective bargaining agreement with the principals union?
I'm not sure if it will require a change in the agreement per se, but I would hope that they would be partners in how we, and actually it is required that they be partners in how we revise our evaluation system.
In the wake of Mahmood versus Taylor, what is MCPS's plan for notifying families of potentially contested materials to allow them to opt their children out?
Well, I think we could take a giant upgrade just by notifying parents of what we're teaching, period. So I think that this is actually a great opportunity for us to communicate better, and we will clean up this mess too on aisle 4. We're in the process of developing a opt-out procedure that looks very similar to opt-out procedures that we've had in the past to allow for parents that would like to, on the grounds of religious basis, to opt out of curriculum and to have alternatives.
What will be the responsibility of classroom teachers in this notification system?
Hopefully minimal. I think that the administrative burden is very real in trying to manage a lot of this. I think they're already going to have their hands full in terms of providing alternatives. Any type of form that we generate will be processed centrally, and teachers and principals informed as to the disposition, rather than it be the teacher's responsibility and the teacher's discretion. We don't want to place teachers or even principals in a position where they have to make a judgment call, and that, quite candidly, will introduce a level of variance that I think all of us would be uncomfortable with.
So is the solution then to just put all the curriculum online and make it available such that everybody can look, and it's up to parents then to figure out what they disagree with?
I think we're getting to a place where the more information we have available to more people, the better off we are from a transparency lens. But even so, the findings of the Supreme Court case, which has been remanded back to the Fourth Circuit with instructions, does have a narrow finding in terms of religious basis objections. So people can't really just opt out of curriculum because they just are uncomfortable with the curriculum. That's not how this will work. But if they have a religious grounds, they certainly can make that known to us through a process, and we will follow through.
I'm just looking at the administrative burden of that. I mean, it's really a lot. I mean,
it is.
But if you put everything out, and then the problem is that, say, a teacher wants to bring in a newspaper article from the morning, but they can't now because it hasn't been put on the transparency list.
Well, I don't think so. I think that there is still the opportunity for teachers to be creative and to exercise good judgment. Not everything is grounds for religious dispute.
You have said that legal fees in special education cases are among the worst MCPS expenses.
Yes.
The courts have just awarded $500,000 to a teacher who sued MCPS for wrongful accusation of racism, and another 3 teachers have sued MCPS on First Amendment grounds for speech outside work in support of Palestine, which MCPS looks likely it will lose. How are you hoping to cut your legal costs?
The ultimate goal is to not end up in court in the first place, and to be better stewards of working well with people. I think that that's a pain point for us.
But how would you resolve this issue with the 3 teachers? What else would you have done?
I think that in some of our legal troubles, I think that there's disagreement over process, and that ultimately leads to bad outcomes for us. when we could be a lot more precise and a lot more focused on how we're working with people. And candidly, we've been adversarial. Sometimes it's called for, other times it's not. And many of the times that we have chosen an adversarial path, when we've been wrong, we haven't owned it.
Thomas Taylor, thank you for taking the time. Good luck in the new school year.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Colors that's vibrant. Cast me in images molded in bronze. All of my life is a painting, a mural, a triumph. I know that I've already won. I see the future in real time. I'm a real deal king with a gold mine. Though they break down my body and hang me to dry to the sky, I'm a fly. Never will I leave my loved ones to die. I never will, never will. We gon' all get home. Put that on my soul, put that on my tombstone. Came for myself.
That's all for this episode of I Hate Politics, where we aim to stem the decline in local news by working with community voices. Don't forget to tune in to our Tuesday morning news analysis. I Hate Politics is produced by me, Sunil Dasgupta, with support from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I direct UMBC's political science program at the universities at Shady Grove in Montgomery County, where, among other things, we explore and learn about politics, government, and society close to home. Music for this episode comes from Cataclysm, a Damascus-based rapper, a former MCPS and UMBC alum, also known as Matt Thornton. You can find his album Machine Gun Preacher on YouTube at The Reckoning 301. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihbpod.org. I hope you will subscribe and share the podcast as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.
Speaking with Jehovah, I'm his own son. Looking for the boys on the hill from afar while I'm staring down the barrel of my own gun. And my mother screams, rip through the veil. Why does evil prevail? I'm on the highway to hell by myself. About to free every last man in the cell. Hop in the ride, soon we all gon' be well. Some of you denied me, and now your eyes cleared with some Visine. You crucified, tried and deride me. Now you act surprised to defy me. I'm a man full of mercy. It hurts me to have to let you slip through the sands of eternity. It occurred to me with the deep sense of the urgency of the matter. You murdered me.